Welcome to the Safety and Risk Success podcast with me, Christian Harris. Today we're going to talk about safety culture. What is it, why it's important, and how can we tell if we're on track or off track? This is a recording of a safety roundtable, as always, nice and interactive, and I hope you enjoy it. Cheers.
Welcome to the Safety and Risk Success podcast with Christian Harris. We believe that proactive safety and risk management powers business performance. Each week we explore this theme, sharing guests, stories, insights, trends, hints and tips. You can find us on all the major podcasting platforms, and video versions are available on YouTube. But for now, let's join the conversation with Christian.
Welcome everybody to this safety roundtable session today, where we're going to be talking about safety culture. And I'm hoping this one's going to be nice and interactive. So looking forward to getting feedback from everybody in the chat that's joining us, as well as those of you that are on the Zoom. I'll be encouraging you to go to reactions, raise your hand, and come and unmute and give us your thoughts on everything to do with safety culture as well. I'm just checking that everything is working, which it seems to be in terms of all of the different places that people can join us. So we'll have people on Zoom, we'll have people joining us as well on Facebook, in a couple of Facebook groups. And we also have people who could be watching this on Twitter, X, whatever you call it, and a few other places as well. So it's great to see you all here, and I'm going to keep letting people into the meeting on Zoom as we go. So if you haven't been to one of these sessions before, these are called the Safety Roundtable. They happen every 2 weeks on Wednesday lunchtime UK time. And every time we cover a slightly different topic. It could be like today that I'm going to introduce a topic, or like last time we had James McPherson on as a guest, and he and I did go back and forth and discuss rebranding, safety, and operational risk management. So it could be either or, but today it's just me. It's an open discussion, so I'm going to introduce the topic, and then we will open it up to a interactive chat, and do invite your fellow colleagues, your fellow safety professionals, and anyone else you think might be interested in joining us to editions of the roundtable, because the more the merrier. So safety culture. Now, this is obviously a topic that is one that we speak about a lot. And I thought it would be useful just to start off with by trying to give a bit of a definition to this, but I'm happy to take other people's definitions as well. So what I kind of came up with was a commitment to safety at all levels within an organization, from frontline staff, including managers and executives / the board. So what is safety culture? It is that commitment at all levels of an organization. And I suppose you could also include stakeholders, third parties, supply chain, etc., in that as well. The term safety culture, I don't know if you know this, but it came from the Chernobyl disaster. And the idea behind it is that you can only really understand safety within an organization, or how an organization behaves towards safety, through the understanding that there are assumptions, values, norms, and history, artifacts, things that have happened in the past, and all of these drive behavior. And so the concept really is that you can't understand the safety culture of an organization unless you have the backstory, unless you understand all of these things that are going on, and therefore to influence the safety culture, you need to be thinking about all of those things as well. And the prominence of the phrase safety culture has shot up in recent years. It's something that started obviously thinking about this nuclear disaster, but it's gone throughout different organizations and sectors now. And so it is something that it really is part of the lexicon of the safety profession. What are the key components? Commitment from leadership, involvement from the employees, and then the specific risk management practices that are put into place, so the policies and the procedures. Joe says he has to shoot off. That's no problem at all, Joe. Anything, guys, to add into these? As I say, if you're on Zoom, go to reactions, raise your hand, come and speak, give us your thoughts and feedback, or you can pile into the chat as well. Why is safety culture important then? We've got the context. Why is it important? So, and there's a big question mark sometimes around whether we should even have the word safety as part of this. Are we not just talking about culture? But let's say we are talking about safety culture. Why is safety culture important? Because if you can walk the walk, it shows the staff and other stakeholders that you take safety seriously, and therefore that is going to drive your overall culture of safety. The second key thing is it's going to deliver you outcomes in terms of safety, so fewer incidents, less harm, and lower costs. And the other key thing is performance. So you may have come across the Alcoa example, where a new CEO took over, Paul O'Neill, and he put safety in as the key habit, the key focus of the business. So we often talk about safety as our number one priority. They actually lived and breathed this. And he believed, Paul O'Neill believed, that safety is something that everyone can buy into and something that everyone can rally behind. And if we could get your organization focusing on this one key thing, it would spring off of that lots of other benefits. And what they saw was, yes, they improved the safety outcomes, but also they achieved a much greater level of kind of high performance by embedding safety as a keystone habit. So if you can achieve a good safety culture, it should drive performance and therefore profitability in the organization as well. Tim's suggesting here that in the comments here in the chat, commitment to safety culture needs to be informed, i.e. understanding of what good actually looks like. And that's absolutely true. Fully agree with that, Tim. If you want to unpack that a bit, feel free to let me know and we can come and chat about it. But I do think that one of the big challenges is if we deal with this superficially, so we use phrases such as safety is our number one priority, or we're going for zero harm, but we don't actually know what any of that stuff means, and we talk the talk but don't walk the walk, then we're starting off on a superficial level. We're starting off on an uninformed level, and therefore we don't really know what we're doing and what the outcomes are we're trying to achieve. So how can we tell whether an organization is doing a good job on safety culture or not? I've used some weighing scales here on the screen just to try to give some examples of a positive side of things and a negative side of things. Obviously, point 2 is incident and near miss data. Now, if we're getting a high number of incidents, then that might suggest that the safety culture could be better. But near miss data is really interesting and important here because in my experience and the experience of many others, interested to get your view on this as well, if we have a poor safety culture, we may well be getting incident data through, but probably not getting much in terms of near misses. Whereas if the safety culture is more positive, we start to get near miss data reporting at a much higher level. And that can inform us, going back to what Tim just said, on making the right decisions to try to reduce the safety and drive down the actual incident level. But the other things, just as a comparative, I would say that if you've got a low engagement in safety, that's a sign a leading indicator that the safety culture is not in a good place. Conversely, if you've got good communication and good teamwork, that suggests that it may well be in a good space. If you're seeing things like shortcuts, excuses, or blame, that's a sign that the safety culture is not as positive as it might be. Conversely, if we are seeing best practices, if we're seeing that level of high performance that we talked about, then that is a great sign that the safety culture is ticking over nicely. I recently spoke to Stuart Hughes, the president of IOSH, on my podcast, and he was talking with me about the sort of intersection of safety and high performance. His day job is working in Formula One for Mercedes. And if you think of what the definition of an ultimate high performance environment is, then many people think about a Formula One pit stop. And that kind of goes through that type of organization and that sector very, very much. High performance is what they're at. And I would argue that you can't really have high performance without having a safety culture, because if people don't feel safe, they won't be willing to enable to perform well. But is safety culture the chicken or the egg? In other words, what comes first, performance or safety culture? Now, I remember doing a presentation for an IOSH group. This was it was before COVID. And I was talking about my day-to-day work around slip accident prevention. And I had quite a few people coming up to me after the talk saying, "This is great. We've got to get started on this. Can you help us with this? Can you help us with that?" And then I went over and spoke to one particular chap who was quite senior in safety in a supermarket group. And he said to me, "Thanks for the presentation. That was really interesting. We're just not ready for this yet. We can't do all this technical stuff. We can't, measure how slippery our floors are, and we can't work on improving our cleaning regimes and et cetera, because our safety culture isn't ready yet. We've got to work on our safety culture first." And I didn't push back on that because it wasn't the forum to do that, clearly. But that to me was really quite a troubling thing that he said. I'm interested to get some feedback here. Let me know what you guys think about this in the chat, or if you want to come and have a natter with me. But to me, you can't achieve a high safety culture, if we go back to what that definition of safety culture involves, unless you have those physical control measures in place to a good level. Because if people don't feel that there's a commitment from safety, and they don't feel like they have the platform on safety to perform, then they're not going to feel aligned to the safety mission and vision that you're on. So I think it can be quite convenient sometimes to use safety culture as a bit of an excuse for inaction. In other words, like the example I gave, we're not quite ready to do this technical piece of work or this investment because we need to get the safety culture right. But firstly, the safety culture is never going to be perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect time in any setting from what I can see in life. But also, I think that if you don't have those building blocks, those foundations in place, then you're never going to achieve the safety culture that you aspire towards anyway. So I do think, and returning to the point Tim made about we've got to get these things right and make the informed choices of what good actually looks like, we've got to do those things to a certain degree before the safety culture will develop. And then I think the safety culture can act as a bit of a flywheel to help us keep on improving from there. Connor, you've raised your hand. Do you want to unmute and come and have a chat?
Yeah, no, I was going to add on to your point there. I believe like the safety culture can only work when you get like proper investment from your leadership, because it can become more like a smoke and mirrors, where it's used as a tool, but it won't really work until you get the proper money, the structure put in place, the practices, the procedures, and have complete buy-in from the whole team.
Yeah.
It seems to be a common occurrence. Well, from my experience, is if you don't have leadership willing to truly own it, it won't work because it doesn't filter down through the team.
Yeah. What have you done to sort of try to overcome that?
It's building relationships and trying to show the value in it and show
Mm.
you how the near miss reporting can show trends and how can it reduce accidents possibly in our working on height or reduce accidents when it comes to people working with hot work, et cetera, that we have had in our business. But it just seems to be, if it doesn't cost them, if the accidents aren't going to cost the company large amounts of money, and,
Mm.
and they won't they don't buy in. It just takes a lot of time and effort, and then it demotivates, like personally myself or all the members of the team that are working towards trying to improve the culture.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it? Because
Yeah,
you don't invest, the culture doesn't develop, or it goes down,
yeah,
and then you don't get a return on investment, so then you don't invest even more,
yeah.
and then it just kind of goes on from there.
But I feel if you properly invest in it and buy into it, it can really work,
Mm.
and it can further your workload too, because then your clients see that you have a good culture and they're willing to invest in you from other companies that I've worked for.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'd agree with that. I'm sort of going a little bit on my high horse, not my high horse. I'm working on a project around um, what I call profit from safety, and this is all about the concept that safety should be if you do it well, it should be a profit driver for the business rather than a cost. So I think
Absolutely.
we often look at it as an investment and as in it's a cost, right, rather than a profit driver. If you do it right, then, and there are lots of examples. That Alcoa example I gave you is obviously a really big one, that it will drive the profitability of the business. So I'm doing a lot of work researching that, and going to be putting out some stuff on that
Okay.
in the next few months. So keep your eyes peeled for that.
How do you think a safety advisor can change? Like a safety advisor is a very small role in a big organization. How can one person or two or three people in an organization maybe that has 300 or 400 people really affect the culture when they don't have the buy-in? Oh,
That's a great question. I'll give you some thoughts, but if anybody else has got any thoughts on or advice for Connor on this, then do feel free to raise your hand and come and give me your insights or experiences as well, because I want to make this as interactive as possible rather than just a Q&A session from me. I would say, so in my business, I have to sell. So although we're a safety business and we're trying to make the world safer and do all sorts of cool stuff, let's just stop sharing and have a chat. I have to sell. And what I've learned about sales, which is basically influencing somebody to make the right decision that's in their interest, but you need to kind of guide and help them to do it, is that you've got to figure out what's in it for them. And I suppose this is why, returning to my point about profit from safety, I'm trying to figure out what we can do to, as a group of people, to answer that question of what's in it for them from the perspective of the board. Because what's in it for them, the board, is to be profitable, right? If they were more profitable, then they're going to be doing well. But that's at a macro level. But at a more micro level, it's about having those conversations. It's about being proactive at speaking to people and trying to really understand, what people are looking to achieve, what are their KPIs, what would be in it for them personally. So, if you're speaking to your head of operations, what are the key things that are going to make sure that he or she gets a promotion or gets a bonus at the year end, and then seeing if we can figure out a way of enabling those outcomes, those KPIs, through the work that we can do, and explaining to them and influencing them that actually by doing things safer, that will help them to achieve those goals. That's sort of from the ground up level. That's kind of how I would probably
Yeah,
start to
I do.
try and make
I
that
agree with
change.
it. I agree with the KPI. One of my rates, one of my companies in the past, they put a big push on near miss KPIs. So when you reported a near miss, it went as a positive. You got thanked for it, and there was the more near misses that you reported,
Hmm.
it increased your KPI month on month.
Yep.
And the stats, and at the end of that year, we had our stats were great, and we're able to see trends and put in procedures to deal with it. But
Yep.
then again, as you said previously, there, when people aren't reporting, you can't actually manage the risk because you don't know where the issues are specifically,
Yep.
and it's just finding that midpoint where people are willing to and trying to motivate them to do it.
Yeah. It's as with anything in life, it's all about balance, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Craig, did you want to come in here and add to this, or make another point?
Yeah, just a quick one. Having gone through this numerous times, the only thing I'd say, it always depends on the top to bottom, bottom to top syndrome. Similar to what you were saying before, Christian, about getting that buy-in. One quick and easy way to get buy-in sometimes is that rather than not just the near misses, which is a great one to go at, and you've got lessons learnt and nobody's been hurt. The key one sometimes is if you've actually got riddles or reportables or anything that's cost or sickness to the business, that's always can be a shoe-in to say, right, if we improve the culture, we could improve safety, we could improve the mindness, the wellness, the health of people. That's always a good way to sort of like get that initial, how should we say, foot in the door. Break into the meeting at that top level. And the only thing is sometimes you've got to go a little bit negative to get a positive sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. I think that's true sometimes. What I would say is, if you again think about what's in it for them, what are they trying to achieve? If you think about the board of any organization, and I think you used the word, or if you didn't use the word, you maybe inferred it, about kind of high performance. So everybody wants to have a high performance team, because they know that if you've got a higher performance team, then you're going to be more productive and more efficient, and therefore you're going to make more profit. And culture is a massively key component of high performance. And so that's where sometimes this question about do we need to include the suffix of the prefix of safety, not suffix, is an interesting one, because if we could wave a magic wand and achieve a great culture in our business, then the reality is that that would be aligned to and supportive of the safety outcomes that we are looking to achieve. So do we need to label it as safety culture, or should we just be thinking about, let's drive the culture here? Because I think people will buy into culture as being a really important KPI. Go on, Craig.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt again. I think
No.
the thing is that what you've got to look at as well now is that obviously 45,003, as well as 45,001. Not mandatory. It never will be until probably maybe another 5 years or 6 years, when people are really having to invest into culture and look into the incident accident stats. And I think the thing is that having trained it, done it, I'm just doing a psychology level 6 diploma at the moment to look at culture with regards to what I do and what I try to infuse into my clients or employers. The thing is that people won't just use it as a tick box. You're starting to see it a little bit. It's got to be entrusted. It's got to be infused. It's got to be the positive, not just a case of right. It's the in thing to do. And anybody and everybody, and yourself, Christian, please take that with a pinch of salt. But it all depends on that person or those persons at the top, how important they actually see it.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's fundamentally you've got to get to enact true change and improvement throughout an organization. You've got to get those senior people on board, or at least one of the senior people on board. But I think you can start that kind of groundswell, ground up, or maybe not ground up, but kind of in the middle by engaging with your fellow managers, let's say, at that kind of level, and understanding what's in it for them, what are they trying to achieve, etc., and trying to be that enabler. But I think you're right that eventually you are going to have to get somebody at the top table on board with this for it to really, really work and to cascade throughout the organization. But any improvement is a good improvement. This is one area, like safety in general. If we can make something 1% safer, not to steal the title of Andrew Sharman's book, but that's a positive thing and it's a worthwhile thing for us to do. So, yes, we can have that goal of trying to achieve this fantastic safety culture, but if we can improve that culture one stone at a time, one conversation at a time, one colleague at a time, then that's definitely still a worthwhile thing for us to do. I would suggest. So I am keen to continue this discussion. So here are just some prompts and some thoughts, and be keen to see if anyone else is up for chatting some of these things through. So what good or bad safety culture practices have you observed in your workplace or in other workplaces that you have been part of or party to? What challenges have you faced in implementing a better safety culture? How do you think organizations can better promote a culture of safety? How do you convince colleagues in the board that a better safety culture is needed? So we've started touching on some of these questions already, but any thoughts you've got around any of these things would be appreciated. So if you've got anything you wanted to share, then go to reactions, raise your hand, and I will call you up. I thought as well I would just share a quick free resource, which is an online quiz that we've developed, which is all about what kind of safety champion are you, and this will help you to understand if you're a visionary safety champion, a problem solver, somebody who's kind of more practical, or somebody who's got a lot of empathy and is people focused. And the benefit of this is from this discussion around safety culture, if you can figure out which of those 4 key profiles you have, then you can leverage that to your best ability, but also see where you've got areas to improve. So if you want to give that a go, you can find it at safetychampion.scoreapp.com, and it might just help to inform you a little bit on how you should go about trying to effect change when it comes to safety culture. Okay, I'm just going to have a look in the chat, because the chat has been going quite along quite well, but it's sometimes quite hard to see these as we're talking. A few people asking if the discussions will be available to review at a later time. Absolutely. So they pretty much always, these safety roundtables end up on the Safety and Risk Success podcast in audio form, and they'll always go onto my YouTube channel as well. And if you're streaming this on LinkedIn or Facebook, or I think even X/Twitter, I think you can go back and watch the recordings as well. So yeah, they're always we're always trying to get them to be available for everybody. Let's just have a look on. Craig, go on. You want to come and give us some thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, sorry to take over a little bit, but I think
No, it's fine, because we're looking for more volunteers. So you're hopefully you're encouraging people.
I mean, the key thing that you've got to think of is it's your strategy. The way that I always foresee it, and I've been in this game 20 odd years, and I think the thing is that you come into some systems part of the way through as a consultant, you then try to infuse some systems and start them off. The one thing what I would say, be very, very careful of, if you get to the stage where somebody wants to incentivize it by vouchers or money or whatever. I was on the site where it was a project and they were giving a television away every month, and then they got into a every quarter and then a monetary prize. All I'd say to you is that if you go to that stage, be very, very careful, because the thing is that you will then only target certain people who are incentivized by money or whatever. You don't always get that 100% that you want inclusion or expectation or reaction from. The only people who know your guys will be you. So the thing is that it's getting that buy-in first and foremost, getting a budget of some description if you can, or putting some of your time, which is the cost, into it to, to progress with something similar to what you were saying before, Christian. You know, lead by the front, and sometimes you've got to do that, and it's getting these free resources like what you just said before, the surveys, things from the Charman books, Mr. Marsh, Jay Sanker, all those types of people, but infuse it by showing that you want it, and then they'll need it. That's the easiest way I've ever tried to do it, into much that, and then once you get that one head turned at a certain level, medium management or senior management, that's when it's time to sort of like go in with the elements of, right, how far do you really want to do this? Because the thing is that when you look at, I mean, I've dealt with a lot of corporate, I've dealt with large, medium, small, two-man band companies, and I'll tell you this honestly, it's easier always to put it in a smaller company compared to a larger company. There's not as many sign-offs, there's not as many people need to get authorized. But it's again, this is where the strategic part of it, where if you want this, you then target, and I'll say it plainly, the person who you think would want it or does want it, and then also has got that authorization or buying power to support you or help to support you for the future endeavors. But it's having that strategy, I think, at the beginning of how, you know, you said on that tool that you're discussing, what you were. All of us have to be a little bit of all of those,
exactly,
to get it started.
Exactly, yeah. And the idea of the tool is the little quiz is to figure out which of those are you strongest in, and therefore you can play to those strengths, but recognize as well that if you're not so good in the other areas, right, what can you then do to try to improve on those? Because yeah, you're right, we do need aspects of all of those.
Or, I mean, the other thing, Christian, sorry to interrupt you, is that if you know somebody who's got that strength, start a team then, and ask, would you be wanting to help me, or can you help me?
Yeah, that's exactly what I do. So I have in my business, I have support around like finance and admin, because those are not really my strengths, and I have people who go and do operational delivery, and go out and physically do stuff to make buildings safer for our clients, and they work bloody hard and they work overnight and etc. And then I do the stuff that I'm good at, stuff like this and the things that I enjoy, and they wouldn't want to and probably couldn't do this stuff as well as me. But actually, that's the beauty of having a team, that you can bring these complementary skills together, and the sum is the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. I think that's the right expression, isn't it? The other thing, Craig, you mentioned there that I think it is really important is the whole thing around incentivization, and we see this, this aspect of safety is an area where this is relevant, but also when it comes to reporting, from the perspective of not so much that if you report you get some kind of reward, but the opposite of, if we're aiming for zero harm or to keep our reporting below a certain level, that kind of has the opposite effect of encouraging people to underreport, and therefore you can sometimes see near misses or leading indicators not being reported because we're trying to do our best to maintain this kind of level of overall performance around incidents. But if we're not being honest and open, then we're just waiting for the bad thing to happen, which inevitably will. We could have potentially stopped it.
Well, that's why I think more so. I was speaking to a client the other week, and he asked us, he said, well, how would you incentivize it? Because I do want to put something to do it on a Friday, do it on a bacon butty, do it on something that's relative, but then it's not on the monetary value. It's more a case of thank you. It's something that's it's lesser in expenditure, but it's like I say, that was on the construction on estate and house building.
Yeah.
But it's tailoring it to what the guys at the sharp end would want.
Yeah.
And then you give them a little bit of a plus, but it's not then too much of an incentive that they'll go, oh well, if you do this week, you'll get that £25. And this is what I'll tell you straight on one project, I could guarantee I knew where the next good safety alert stroke moment would be, because they were spelling them, so each of them got like 25 quid and then got into the pot for 100 quid. And then from 100 quid, they got into the pot for 500 quid at the end of the year. And this is where you've got to be so careful. So, I mean, all I'd say is that it's good to reward, but sometimes it's better just a thank you or something small like the bacon butty.
Let us know in the chat, what if your organization said to you, we want to reward culture, and we're not rewarding safety, we're rewarding culture. Give us some ideas of the sorts of things that you would like for your organization to give you. And I'll tell you why this would be an interesting thing is when we think about, and again, we're looking at culture overall here, rather than safety culture, but there's a lot of trends towards foosball tables and beer taps in the office, or free food or whatever, but sometimes that's not really what people actually want. I think sometimes people want to feel heard, people want to feel supported, people want to feel as if the organization they're a part of is up to something good in the world, and that they're doing things for charity or making a positive impact in another way. So I think there's all sorts of ways we can incentivize behavior around culture. And again, it goes back to what's in it for them, what do they want, and ask the question and figure out what it is. What is it that's going to turn the dial on this? Yes, from a selfish perspective, we all want people to be focusing on the safety aspects. We'd like better reporting, we'd like better compliance, etc., etc. But if we can get the overall culture in a better place, then those sorts of things hopefully will kind of naturally come from that, because if we're all feeling part of a team, we're all aligned, etc., then we're going to be doing the things we should be doing from a best practice perspective anyway. There are some good suggestions coming through, and they're all varied, which is kind of what I expected to see. Good stuff. Well, thanks everybody for joining this session today. It's a big topic, safety culture, and it's one that we rightly are all focused on. So hopefully this session has been a bit of help to you in terms of giving you some things to think about, go away and implement. Do have a go at the Safety Champion quiz as well, because I'm sure that would inform you and give you some help too. Look forward to seeing you on another episode of the Safety Roundtable in a couple of weeks. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for joining us on the Safety and Risk Success podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit follow and do share on social media. Does anyone you know spring to mind as a great guest, even yourself? If so, please contact us on podcast@slipsafety.co.uk. See you next week for another episode.